All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Camera one.
Count.
Ready, camera two.
And cue talent.
2,
One.
1, roll for record.
The Frontrunners are floundering. How's that for a little alliteration? I'm John Phillips, and stumbles from Hillary and Jeb are at the top of today's rundown. The ghosts of Christmas past are haunting both the presumed presidential frontrunners, with Jeb Bush seemingly totally unprepared to answer a completely obvious question about the Iraq War, while Hillary Clinton is ducking and dodging over the release of her emails. The controversy for Jeb started on Fox News with Megyn Kelly. Now it's Fox, so he may have expected a warm reception and harmless questions, but it went off the rails. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Knowing what we know now, would you have authorized the invasion?
I would have, and so would have Hillary Clinton, just to remind everybody, and so would have almost everybody that was confronted with the intelligence they got.
Then on the radio, Sean Hannity didn't let him off the hook the following day, asking him if that's really what he meant, and his answer was different.
I interpreted the question wrong, I guess. I was talking about, given what people knew then, would you have done it, rather than knowing what we know now. And knowing what we know now, clearly there were mistakes as it related to faulty intelligence in the lead up to the war and the lack of focus on security. My brothers admitted to this, and we have to learn from that.
So in other words, if in 2020 hindsight, you would make a different decision?
Yeah, I don't know what that decision would have been. That's a hypothetical.
This guy switched teams more times than Anne Heche. Thank you very much. His answers changed several more times since then. There was a town hall in Nevada where he stuck to his talking point about not answering hypothetical questions. Here he is.
When I was governor, I felt it a duty, I didn't have to call all of the family members of people who lost their lives. And I don't remember the total number, but it was easily over 100. And I felt a duty to do that because I admired the sacrifice of their families, and I admired the men and women, mostly men, that made the ultimate sacrifice. So going back in time and talking about hypothetical, what would have happened, what could have happened, I think does a disservice for them.
Then there was a conversation with reporters immediately after he made those comments, hinting that no, he might have chosen differently in Iraq than his brother.
Of course, given the power of looking back and having that, of course, anybody would have made different decisions. There's no denying that.
And don't think that I'm done yet. At another town hall in Arizona, he completely flipped on the question and said no, he wouldn't have gone to war in Iraq.
If we're all supposed to answer hypothetical questions, knowing what we know now, what would you have done? I would have not engaged, I would not have gone into Iraq.
So let's recap. He went from yes to I don't know to I can't answer the question to I may have made different choices to no, I would not have gone to war in Iraq. Got that? Kruiser's creating a flowchart over here. All of this has left even his supporters flabbergasted at how completely unprepared he was to clearly answer a totally predictable question. On the Democratic side, Hillary was facing the release of all the emails that she hasn't already deleted in January of 2016, shortly before the first primary voters head to the polls. But now a judge has ruled that the State Department has to implement a rolling release of her emails, guaranteeing that she will not be able to escape from the story of her ties to the foundation and former cronies, no matter how much she tries to put their past behind her. So both of the supposed establishment frontrunners are having a really rough time for this early in the campaign. Do Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush just have too much baggage to make it onto Air Force One? If so, could we see not one but two different dark horse candidates go to the general election? Or will their large political machine still manage to steamroll opponents in spite of all the blundering? Joining me to figure all this out is stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Kruiser. And right beside him, filling in for our very own Scott Ott, is Fox 11 anchor and reporter Lauren Sivan. Kruiser, let's start with you. We were spending some time before the show talking about Jeb Bush and just how he looks when he's on camera. It seems to me like it would be the biggest relief in the world for him if he were to just drop out and go do something in Florida.
That's the way I always look when I had to do anything when my daughter was young that involved other people's children. I always had that, oh, get me out of here look, like that hangdog, stoop shoulder. Here's the thing that stuns me the most about this, is that one of the things that the establishment Republicans always lecture us crazy right-wing nut jobs about is that our candidates are always unprepared rubes who don't know how to handle the press and say stupid things, and that's why they lose elections. All this Nimrod has had to do for several years is prep for this election. You would think that somewhere along the way they said, you know, you might be compared to your brother because he was, the president for 8 years. They might ask you questions about your brother who was the president for 8 years. Maybe you should prep for some questions. You know, one of the biggest things from your brother's tenure was that he sent us to war. You might get some questions about that Jebster, John Ellis Bush. And he comes out, so the establishment candidate is an idiot here, and he needs to go as quickly as possible because you're right. He doesn't want to be president. He doesn't look like he wants to be president, and I don't want a president named Jeb.
That does sound a little Appalachian, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does.
How does he not have an answer for this obvious question?
It was obvious, and I mean, maybe he did mishear the question, because we did see even Marco Rubio was having trouble with it on the Sunday shows this past week. He was talking to Chris Wallace, but it is the way the question is worded that, is it in hindsight that you're asking, or is it, knowing what we knew then and not knowing now? I mean, maybe that it should have been a clarifier, but as you brought up, he had about 8 other opportunities to clear it up. He should have picked an answer and stuck with it, and instead, he was all over the map. And by the way, when you're running for president, all you get is hypothetical questions, okay?
That's
because
right.
you're not president yet.
Thank
we want to
you.
see what you would do in these situations. So the fact that he's not going to answer any hypotheticals, you're going to have a tough road on this campaign.
You know who had a really clear, concise answer to this was Andy Card, the former White House chief of staff. He said, if we knew that Saddam Hussein didn't have weapons of mass destruction, we wouldn't have gone in. It's one sentence. Everyone understands it. Why is it so difficult for the candidates to come up with something like that?
Especially right now, because it would give a nice framework for the discussion about Iran, because we didn't know everything about Saddam Hussein at the time because he had been shunning the UN inspectors for the longest time. Nobody knew. We don't have any intelligence on the ground there. We were relying solely on electronic surveillance, so we didn't know that. And the same thing is going to play out with Iran right now. At first, they're going to let an inspector or two, and then they're going to go, oh God, we're busy that weekend. You can't come in. And then we're going to be back in the same position. So it establishes a perfect framework for what's going on right now, and you can turn it on the head. You turn it on its head and start talking about that to get away from this. But crafty Mr. Jeb, he's, and then I had a fish when I was a boy, and George ate it.
He looks exhausted.
He does.
Really does. He doesn't look like he's going to have the stamina to get through this next year and, couple of months now.
He looks like the oldest person in Florida, which is hard to do.
Yeah. And I mean, with the race wide open, with how many people have jumped in already? Is like 12?
Something like
I'm
that.
declaring tomorrow.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Just I feel left
You're
out.
declaring
He
what?
better take some 5-hour energy. He's got to look alive.
Let's shift gears and talk about Hillary for a second here, because Hillary's gone in the exact opposite direction. She's just not answering anyone's questions. If you want a question answered by her campaign, you have to give them like 3 days advance notice. She's not having press conferences. She's not going on the chat shows. Does that put her in a better position?
For a while, we're seeing this eerie thing develop, and I've written about it recently, where the press is going to give her some cover for a little bit on this, but the press has been involved in making themselves the center of the stories for the last decade and a half now, and they're starting to get a little upset that grandma's not giving them any cookies. They're really mad that even in the Washington Post the other day, they got the Hillary email from the campaign spinning why she wasn't taking questions and what she's doing. And the Washington Post even said, really, this is what you're going with? So the press is getting to the point right now where their anger about being shut out is going to start trumping their need to protect her.
Can she survive if she just says, you know what, I'm not going on Meet the Press, I'm not having press conferences, I'll go on The View every once in a while, I'll go on with Letterman, I'll go on with Stephen Colbert, but that's pretty much it. The only information you're getting from me is information that I want out there.
I think that will last maybe another couple of weeks, maybe a month or two. But once we really get rolling here, and once we get some other, contenders on the Democratic side, then she's gonna be forced to. She'll have to start giving up more. There's no way she can keep this up.
I think her actions may bring Democrats who wouldn't otherwise run for office into the race, because they're going to say, look, she is so quiet on so many issues, like the trade issue that really has the left upset. You watch MSNBC, they're screaming their heads off about this. If they think that she is secretly a Bill Clinton type of Democrat and she's going to get elected and it's going to be free trade and the crime bill and that sort of thing, welfare reform, then I could see Elizabeth Warren at the 11th hour deciding to jump in because of the uncertainty.
If Elizabeth Warren keeps sparring with the president right now over the trade thing too, she might just be more emboldened as time goes on. All along I've said she's going to be the nominee. I'm not backing off of that yet. I'm said that Elizabeth Warren's going to be the nominee. I think in the end somehow they're going to find a way to get her in there, and it's because Hillary's concussion is going to come back for some reason.
Yeah, and I just think we're sick of them. We're sick of the Clintons. I mean, and perhaps to the same extent we might be sick of the Bushes too. I don't know that this name recognition is going to work in either of their favors this time around.
You can't tell the difference between. I mean, put one of those Chairman Mao Moo things on Jeb right now, and they're the same person. He's just a little taller. There's no difference.
All right, last question before we wrap it up. Why not put the emails out there now if you're Hillary Clinton? We're so far from the election. If you put it out there now, everyone will have forgotten about it by the time we start voting.
We don't know
But if you wait and wait and wait, every day you wait, it's another day closer to Iowa.
We don't know what's in those emails yet.
She
Maybe
does.
she's hoping that there's another headline that'll distract us by the time anything good comes out.
But even if there's something bad in there, don't you want it out now?
I think that they're so used to tightly controlling their media around them and the media machine around them that they don't want to just give in or capitulate in any way. They want to say, this is, we're gonna parse it out and we're gonna. But that's their MO all along too. With anything, if these appearances of impropriety, is to do the bare minimum that's asked of them. They don't really get out in front of anything. They make you fight to pull each little piece of information out legally.
We couldn't even find out what she ordered at Chipotle.
Right, or some selfies of Bill.
That's right.
On the beach.
Expect? Playing the bongos.
If you want your 7-day cleanse, there you go.
All right, so what do you think? Does Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton have too much baggage to be elected? We want to know your thoughts, so be sure to put them in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.